Hold. Flight control receipt to CCLS, hold it.
Clock stopped at T-minus 3 minutes, 50 seconds.
I took a trip to the American Space Coast where I attended a NASA social event to watch astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams board a ULA Atlas V rocket for the very first time. Their destination? The International Space Station. This is Boeing's Starliner CFT capsule, and it's only the 6th time in the history of the American space program where astronauts will launch from American soil in a new spacecraft. At the Kennedy Space Center, we received a tour of the commercial crew and cargo processing facility, formerly the heart of space shuttle operations and the current home of the Starliner program. We received a detailed tour of the flight hardware used on an early Starliner mission that tested the abort capabilities of the spacecraft. You can see the signatures of the talented people that worked on this mission inscribed on the side of the capsule. As an engineer myself, this was truly inspiring.
We've been launched, all Atlas V's here on the Cape have been launched from this control room. You can see the consoles. We have 3 rows of consoles in here. There's very few physical switches anymore, right? You know, when I very first started launching from a blockhouse, some different complex, everything was just switches and lights. It was very old 1960s technology. But here, everything is done by a keyboard. There's a lot of automated software that helps us in monitoring the systems and controlling everything safely on the pad. You know, the concept is to go ahead and load propellant on the rocket, which takes us about 2 hours to do. And then we'll go into what we call a quiescent state, right? Where the launch vehicle is stable, it's just everything's full, everything's charged up to flight pressures, and it's just sitting there. And it's at that point that we'll have the ground crew go in and prepare the capsule for the crew. Meanwhile, the flight crew is over at KSC getting donned in their flight suits and getting those checked out. And then when we're ready for them, we'll have the convoy leave KSC and they'll drive over here and go up the CAT and get inside the capsule.
As we waited for Butch and Sonny to make their walkout, the feeling of excitement was palpable.
Here they come, our CFT crew, taking their first steps outside for their historic flight test to the International Space Station.
We watched the astronauts greet their friends, family, and the press, and even from a distance, I knew this was the one moment of the trip that I needed to capture. As we watched our beloved Starliner crew make their way to the launch pad, I couldn't help but think back to old footage of Apollo 11 astronauts making their way to the Astro van. It was time to wait, but for how long? None of us could have predicted.
Starliner launch teams are in reset mode after Monday's scrub. A part is being swapped out as the first Starliner mission with astronauts on board is now scheduled for May 17th.
What occurred, as was said, is that we have a mechanical valve that vents the ullage pressure on the lock, so it's venting gas. It's not dissimilar to many other valves like that. You have one in your home on your hot water tank that's not all that different. Once we had the crew off, we cycled the valve and it stopped buzzing. If this were a satellite, that is our standard procedure and the satellite would already be in orbit.
Nearly a month later, I made the long trip back to Cape Canaveral to get a second crack at the launch. The atmosphere was different, as we were all hesitant, yet optimistic. But Butch and Sonny's enthusiasm and excitement never wavered. As we began to set up our camera equipment, all eyes were on the clock. With merely minutes left on the countdown, the launch was scrubbed a second time, and the disappointment began to set in as I knew this would be my last trip out to the Space Coast for quite some time. In the case of Starliner CFT, third time was the charm, as I watched Calypso take flight from the comfort of my bedroom nearly a month to the day from its first attempt. Watching the Starliner crew rejoin their friends and colleagues at the International Space Station was an absolute joy to witness. This is what makes space so special, the hard work of so many scientists, engineers, technicians, and many other disciplines creating a moment of pure joy and excitement that's nothing short of a miracle. And I know Starliner has had its issues, but even though it's a cliche to say, space is hard, hiccups happen, and that's how we learn. Thank you again to the amazing staff at NASA Social for putting together such an incredible event. It was truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I will never forget.
Thanks for coming out. Go Butch, go Sunny.